Well, Demery and Sean, thanks again for joining us on the program tonight, and congratulations, first of all, on what happened last night. Demery, let's talk a little bit about the school board hearing. First of all, did you anticipate or expect that there would be so many people turning out in support of you last night?
I really didn't know what to expect. I've never been in this situation before, but I was really happy that so many people did come out.
So, Sean, you were there at the hearing yesterday evening. About 150 people turned out for this event. In fact, as I understand it, the meeting actually had to be moved to a bigger facility.
Yeah, it was quite a large turnout, more than I expected. I did expect quite a few people more than the original room would hold, which was only about 50 people. So I had recommended that, given the publicity that I suggested they moved it to a larger venue, and I'm glad that they did, in fact, take my advice, because there was plenty of people there.
So what happened last night? I mean, how did this all take place? Again, the outcome, a good one. Demery, you get to go back to school. We'll talk about some of the specifics in a minute, but did the school present its side last night?
Yeah, the school went first and essentially presented its side very consistently with what report they had filed with after the incident, and that they had given a copy of that to Demery's family and given a copy of that to the board. So they pretty much stuck to those lines. Then we had an opportunity to cross-examine them, which I really didn't, because factually it didn't really matter what they had to say, at least for what I was looking for. And then we had a chance to present an argument to them. And my argument was along the lines of the law, which is very difficult for a board a lot of times when you have a lawyer telling them what the law is, or at least what the lawyer thinks the law is. They have a hard time digesting that. So I stood up, I think, for about 15 minutes and kind of recapped the federal law, but really the focus for us was the Montana law. And if you have a second, I'll kind of explain generally what I was presenting to them in a nutshell.
Yeah, because I thought it was interesting that you were actually able to go back and find arguments during the legislative session when the laws were passed, right?
Yeah, because we had so little time to prepare for this hearing. I think I only met with Demery's family on Thursday of last week, and the meeting was this. I immediately asked my paralegal to grab the legislative history on the statute that they passed in Montana. I had it by Friday afternoon, and then I reviewed it over the weekend. And interestingly, in the committee meetings, there were two representatives with back-to-back questions, which were to the effect of, in fact, let me just read them if you don't mind.
Sure.
That might be very accurate. One of the representatives says, and this is a quote, he does not want to see rural kids with a .22 in the back of their truck trapped by the bill, and asked if they would be. And a representative of part of the group sponsoring the bill answered they would not be, for the reason that he thought the definition of weapon does not include a rifle that is used strictly for sporting, recreation, and cultural purposes. And then the very next entry in the same committee notes was from another representative, where basically she was asking if could a student bring a truck with a gun in a gun rack and park it there all day? And again, the same response was to the effect that the hunting rifle would not be defined by federal law as a firearm, so it wouldn't be a concern of this legislation. And so my point to them was, although there is the language to the effect of an exception for firearms for this type of use, it isn't clear. I mean, I'll concede that it isn't written clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, but the legislative intent here was to exclude the situation, or in their words, not trap a student who brings a hunting rifle to school. And that, if they were told otherwise, like we don't know if it's covered or it's not covered, then the legislators would have had an opportunity to write that specifically into the bill, that they did not want a student trapped like this. So that was the main thrust. We had other points about federal law and then some inconsistencies in their own policies, but it was the Montana law and what the legislature intended was our main argument.
Okay, and after you presented that argument, Sean, that's when a school board member proposed a motion to get Demery back in school, expunge her record at the end of the year, and as I understand it, help with the schoolwork that's been missed.
That's correct. His name was Larry Wilson, and he was the one that made the motion, and he was pretty matter-of-fact about it. I mean, there was very little discussion before the motion and very few questions asked of me, except for one of the lawyers on the board who's a friend of mine, and very few questions of the staff. I think the only question involved maybe would this affect Emory's ability to go to college. But the motion was made, and it was pretty matter-of-fact, and I was quite actually surprised by the fact that the motion included a request for expungement of her record.
Why were you surprised by that, Sean?
Well, because I've seen the past minutes of what they have done with these incidents in this school district, and they had given kids mainly credit for time served, or in other words, no more suspension other than what they had been suspended up until that point of hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, it was a couple more days beyond that. And so like the last one, I think in October of 2009, it was 15 days of suspension to include the time already suspended. But it was interesting, Cam, because in those minutes of that meeting, they were making a point that they had enough of these violations that they kind of need to start getting a little bit more serious about them. And so I think Demery was the next in line. So I was hoping that the request would simply be to the effect that they were going to not suspend her, give her a chance to make up all of her work, and so the expungement came as a surprise to me.
Given the argument that they needed to get more serious, and then you see the community turnout last night, and the attention really across the country to what I think a lot of folks feel is an injustice. What kind of impact do you think the attention had on last night's hearing, Sean?
Well, from a legal perspective, I think it had a lot of attention. I think what happens in a lot of situations is that the school boards adopt these policies, and they're never really under a microscope. And so behind closed doors, because these students are under 21 or under 18, a lot of times, that it's confidential proceedings, and they're exercising this discipline, which they think is the correct discipline. And and then all of a sudden you get a case that really hits the media attention like this and changes their perspective. So I think that they agreed even, I think some board members even agreed that the policies need to be reviewed, and that the public comment that followed the motion but before the vote was to the effect that the policies need to be reviewed. And we had two local legislatures there. And one of them got up, and they were both in support of Demery, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them got up to speak and said, I have a placeholder for a bill this upcoming session, which starts in January, and we run every other year for legislature. So he says, I have a placeholder, and I'm willing to sponsor something that will help clarify the law. And then we had a local attorney stand up and said, it's your policies, and I'm willing to help sit down and help write some legislation. So it's been a very positive effect from this exposure.
That's great to hear. And Demery, were you back in school today?
I was.
Tell me what that was like.
It was different. I'm just trying to get back to what my normal routine is. Obviously, it was a little overwhelming with everyone coming up to me and, hey, you're back in school, but I was really glad to be back in school.
I'm glad to hear that. And again, I hope that none of this should impact your college career, and I hope that it will not. I'm curious. I mean, what's your take on everything that happened? Now that you're back in school, at the end of the year, your record will be expunged. I mean, looking back on everything that happened, were you've got to feel, I don't know. Tell me how you feel about everything that happened.
Well, I feel that it was unfortunate that I had to be in this situation, but it seems that my situation has sparked some people will look into our law and into the school policies, and I'm really thankful for that, so this won't happen to another kid. And it's been really stressful, and I'm glad that it's over. And I'm really happy.
Well, I know that there are a lot of folks out there who are really happy that you were back in school today. Now, this hasn't turned you off of hunting, has it? You're going to continue hunting?
to continue hunting.
All right, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad that school is going well. And Sean, is there anything more to this story other than at the end of the year, Demarie's expulsion is expunged, and things go back to normal?
So far I don't think there's going to be anything more to the story. I think, if anything, the rest of the story, so to speak, will probably be what the Montana legislature does in response to the publicity this has brought.
Well, hopefully we can get some changes made. And again, Demarie and Sean, thank you both for coming on the program tonight. Congratulations on the good outcome, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.